Let me tell you about the winter that changed everything in Meadowbrook Heights. A perfectly average cookie-cutter Michigan neighborhood where the snow falls hard, the houses match, and the rules never sleep. I'll say this, you think you're prepared for anything when you sign that thick HOA covenant at closing, but you have no idea what's coming for you until it's marching across your driveway at sunrise, phone held up like the torch at the Olympics, ready to burn your day to the ground. That was Barbara Whitmore, HOA Vice President 52 haircut, and highlighted in a way that warned every barista and retail worker for 3 zip codes and a permanent frown so deep you'd think it was tattooed on. Her husband Donald was more rumor than man. I'd seen him twice, always looking like he'd gotten out on good behavior. So there I was, snowblower roaring at 6:30 a.m., just trying to carve out a path to sanity before work, when Barbara comes clomping through the half-dark boots, squeaking her phone, recording my every move. "Ethan Warner," she says, like I might have forgotten my own name. "Do you know what time it is?" "Yeah, I do. Same time I clear my drive every time it snows because I gotta be at work by 8. It's too loud," she huffs, waving her phone, and I'm recording this disruption. Section 12.4 of the HOA Covenant, noise disturbances before 8 a.m. on weekdays, clear violation. Expect a $500 fine per violation. It snows a lot here. You do the math. Now, if you're lucky enough never to have lived under an HOA, let me break it to you. It's less about keeping up the neighborhood and more about wielding power sometimes for no reason, but the thrill of seeing you squirm. And Barbara? She swung that power like a medieval mace. But I'd read those covenants backward and forward. Section 12.4 restricts power tools, jackhammers, saws, mixers, but snow removal equipment specifically excluded. I checked before I bought my electric snowblower, quieter than a normal conversation, but she didn't want to hear it. Her mind was made up. She spun on her heel and stomped away, leaving me standing there, snow soaking through my boots and anger burning in my chest. Inside, my wife Sarah, who saw this all coming a mile away, was already brewing coffee. "Barbara, again," she guessed before I could even take off my gloves. "Apparently my snowblower is too loud," I grumbled. She just shook her head. "She's looking for reasons, Ethan. This isn't about noise." She was right. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had a choice: lay down and take it, or prove once and for all that Barbara was wrong. So I started digging. I researched the city's noise ordinances: 85 dB daytime, 65 dB at night. My snowblower wouldn't break 68 dB standing right next to it. I called in a favor from Marcus, a buddy at work, who hooked me up with his brother-in-law Jeff, a sound engineer with all the pro gear. Saturday, 6:15 a.m. Jeff showed up with his beat-up pickup and his calibrated sound meter. He took readings everywhere: my property line, Barbara's property line, the sidewalk, my driveway. The number's 52 dB at Barbara's line, quieter than 2 people chatting over coffee. Jeff prepped a full report, notarized, certified the whole deal. "You're golden," he said, "and if you need me at the hearing, I'll be there. Just save me a cup of coffee." The hearing came fast, Barbara in the front row, folder in hand, eyes boring holes through me. The board, the president, Linda Morrison, and a couple of others looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Barbara presented her video, her complaint, her righteous indignation. I laid out the covenant, the city rules. Jeff's report handed out copies with the key bits highlighted. 52 dB, I said, well within limits. And snow removal specifically allowed any reasonable hour. For a moment, you could feel the room tilt. The treasurer, Frank, squinted at the numbers. "That's quieter than my mower," he said. Denise, the secretary, agreed. "It's not even loud enough to wake up my dog." Barbara was livid, the spirit of the rule and community standards, and disturbing the peace. But it was over. Linda announced the board's decision: no violation, no fine. Barbara stormed out. But it didn't end there. You'd think after losing so publicly she'd back off. Not Barbara. 3 more violation notices showed up in my mailbox, garbage cans out too long. I had proof they weren't car parked on the street, wrong car. Christmas lights not the approved color they were. Every time I documented, responded, and every time the board dismissed her complaints. Sarah worried I shrugged it off, but then it escalated. Late January. A city inspector knocked on my door, tiptoeing around the edges of embarrassment. Got a complaint about an illegal auto repair business at this address. I let him look around, nothing but a clean garage and a confused homeowner. He apologized, hinted it looked like harassment, told me to keep records. The only thing that changed was the way I looked at Barbara's house across the street. By March, after a winter of harassment, the real storm hit a blizzard almost a foot overnight. Out I went, snowblower humming. And like a horror movie villain, Barbara came barreling across the street this time, dragging poor Donald. She screamed about me being a nuisance, promised to get me kicked out of the neighborhood. Then, because her toolbox of spite had only one tool left, she called the police. Claimed I was operating dangerous equipment and threatening residents. 2 officers showed up, Rodriguez and Chen. Calm, professional, tired. They listened, took statements, talked to neighbors. And here's where the story finally bent in my favor. The neighbors spoke up. Tom and Jennifer Park from down the block. Mr. Henderson next door, they told the truth. They'd seen Barbara harassing us, seen her making life miserable for half the street. The officers shut her down, warned her about false reports. The neighbors, emboldened by the moment, started talking right there in my driveway. Stories of complaints, fines, petty power grabs. Tom Park organized us, brought a formal complaint to the next board meeting. And this time, half the neighborhood showed up. We called for Barbara's removal as vice president. The board reviewed the evidence, 60 notices in 1 year, most baseless or punitive. Even the police officer from that morning showed up to confirm what he'd seen. The vote wasn't close. Barbara was out right there in front of everyone. She stood up, tried to warn us of doom and falling property values, then stormed out for the last time. Within weeks, her house was up for sale. Word got around that Donald had filed for divorce. He'd had enough too. The new neighbors, friendly, normal, grateful to join a real community. The board changed the rules. Now 2 members have to sign off on any violation notice, and there's a proper appeals process. The neighborhood for the first time felt like home. A couple months later, a letter came from the prosecutor. Barbara had been charged with filing a false police report, accepted a plea, was doing community service and anger management. Maybe she learned something. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. She's gone, and Meadowbrook Heights is better for it. I'll tell you what sticks with me, though, through all of it. It wasn't the noise or the snow or even Barbara herself. It was the realization that the smallest things, a decibel reading a timestamp, a neighbor speaking up, can be the cracks that shatter a bully's hold on a place. When you stand your ground, keep your records, and trust your community, even the biggest tyrants can't stand forever. I won't say it was easy. There were nights I wanted to pack up and go, days when I thought it wasn't worth the fight. But it was. Not because I beat Barbara, but because the neighborhood changed for the better. People found their voices. The truth mattered. So here's the million-dollar question, one I hope folks will actually talk about. Where's the line between keeping order and becoming a dictator? When does enforcing the rules stop being about the community and start being about control? I'm not saying HOAs are evil or that order doesn't matter. But unchecked power, even on a small street, is a dangerous thing. Maybe you've got your own story, a nightmare neighbor, a petty tyrant, or the time you stood up and said enough is enough. Share it, debate it, because the only thing that keeps places like Meadowbrook Heights from turning into little kingdoms is when people decide that fairness is worth fighting for, no matter how cold the morning or how loud the snowblower.